will talk about the need for systemic solutions for climate change and nature protection, very much building on some of the things that Munta has already addressed. This, for me, is the challenge for the 21st century. We all want a good life on this planet, but we will need to do it within environmental limits. And the old story that we've been told for the last 4 decades was this: we will first all get rich, and we will use more resources and pollute more, and then we will start pushing our governments and institutions with new post-materialist values, Von Engelhardt 50 years ago almost, and we will go there. It's called the environmental Kuznets curve, and it has 2 problems. First of all, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for footprint. It works for industrial pollution, where there is good evidence that it does work, but not for footprint. And secondly, even if it would work, we cannot by 2050 move another 6 to 7 billion people first into the rich and polluting, and then into the sustainable. So what we need to do is this, and it's the essence also of the Paris Agreement. No, do not first develop a polluting, resource-intensive energy system. Skip that stage and move immediately into where we need to be. And of course, the biggest push needs to come from those who are already living well, but well above the means of the planet. If you want to live within ecological limits, the boundary condition for the 21st century is that we accept that ecosystems are what they are, and we will have to organize the key systems that provide well-being and wealth in society: the energy system, the food and agricultural system, the mobility system, and the urban system, as the ones that we will have to organize in a very different way. Now, we have in Europe, of course, a developing policy framework. You are in fact creating it, which we frame in the immediacy, what we are reporting on annually, which is of course linked to the acquis communautaire. But we also look towards 2020, but increasingly towards 2030, which in policy making is the next 2020. But it makes very little sense to do that, speaking about SDGs and circular economy and climate objectives, if you do not have the 2050 objective in mind. Because you can reach 2030 climate objectives by perfecting, creating efficiency gains in the combustion engine, but with the combustion engine you will never get to 2050. And this is the same with a number of other policies. So if we want to take 2030 serious, we will have to do more than create efficiency gains in current systems. We will have to be transformational, we call it transitional, in policies, in technology, in fiscal systems, in financial systems, in legal systems, as you are discussing today. If you look at the planetary boundaries discussion, I'm not going to go into any details, but if you're in the green zone, you are in what is called in this knowledge field a safe operating space, which means, yes, you will have turbulence in the system, but we think we can manage it through good governance, through technology, through behavioral change. If you go outside of that, you enter into a zone of uncertainty, which could be very risky for human society. And the 2 ones where we are well above the limits are, to many people's surprise, not primarily climate change, but they are biodiversity, and they are the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle, which is of course very closely linked to our agricultural and food system, and thus to fundamental functions of biodiversity. So the 2 crucial ones are actually linked to the topic that you are discussing today. Now, how is the EU on track to reach some of these objectives? Well, if we look at the 2020, that first sort of hurdle at which we look, we're well on the way to reach our renewable energy consumption and greenhouse gas targets. You all know that. But if you look towards 2030 and 2050, the biggest risk we see is the risk of a lock-in, where you say, let's try to reach these targets in 2030, the minus 40%, by perfecting the systems that we have, which means you put your investments, your R&D, your technology, all into that. But we think you will lock in. There are tangential limits to efficiency gains in the current systems. What we need is a transitional approach where we invest in technologies that will not get us to 2030 but to 2050. So the crucial type of knowledge that we want to create is knowledge that can tell to policymakers not just are you reaching your 2030 goals, but are you reaching them by opening pathways to 2050, or are you reaching them by closing pathways to 2050? By now we know that if we don't drastically become more resource efficient, we will not reach the 80 to 95% cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. There's too much carbon embedded in the material cycle. Yeah? So circular economy and low carbon economy are systemically linked to each other, at least in our understanding. But land is also increasingly regarded as a crucial resource and playing a role both in the carbon cycle and in the circular economy. So there again, there is a systemic link, and of course the water cycle is another crucial element that plays in both. And it is there that we need to create resilience. Yeah? And so law can be an instrument to improve our chances of creating a resilient society.